Russian government creates one of the stupidest laws in the whole world. And it's unbelievable that they are doing it in 2024. Russia is going backwards in time and they are trying their best to control every single free speaker who wants to speak out their minds about the situation between Russia and Ukraine. And they really want to grab them in their hands and not let them speak. But before we get into that, I wanted to share some really interesting news with you because what is going on in Russia? Who else is gonna bring out the news to you? Just me, a Russian guy that was born in Russia. So hello and welcome everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about various topics about Russia, obviously about the stupid laws, and some really interesting things that the Minister of Defense, Belousov, has said about a possible war with NATO in Europe. And before I even comment about this, I want to show you this little fragment.
In these conditions, the activities of the Ministry of Defense are being taken into account the following key factors. Firstly, this is the conduct of active combat operations during a special military operation, as well as the implementation of individual tasks and ensuring military presence in the countries Central Asia, Africa, the Caucasus, and Transnistria. Secondly, this is ensuring full readiness for any development of the situation in the medium term, including a possible military conflict with NATO and Europe in the coming decades. This is evident by the decisions that were made by the North Atlantic Alliance Summit held in July of this year. This also reflected in the doctrinal documents of the United States and other NATO countries.
So this guy is saying that, should have army forces spread out everywhere and should be preparing for a war with NATO. But they have been saying for the past 3 years that they are in a fight with NATO, that the whole NATO alliance is against Russia right now, and they're fighting against Russia. What happened to that? What is going on? Literally, who do I believe? Do I believe the Russian propagandists? Do I believe the Russian president? Or do I believe the Minister of Defense saying that they should prepare with war with NATO in Europe? Who should I believe? I don't understand. The Russian government and the Russian propaganda is really giving me severe brain damage because I don't understand who to believe. But the obvious answer is don't believe any of them because when they open their mouths, they're lying straight up. When I was talking about the stupid laws that the Russian government makes, that they want to control the people at the start of the video, the State Duma, which is basically the Russian parliament, I get a feeling every single time I get news like this, is that they sit around at a round table and think, how should we screw the people who are against the regime? People just like myself. They call people like me foreign agents. If you are not agreeing with the government and you want to speak out your mind, guess what happens? You're labeled a foreign agent. Also, I quote internal enemies because they call everybody from the West their enemies from the outside, and the people who are against the war and the Kremlin regime are the internal enemies. They have introduced a ban of foreign agents of disposing of their properties. So basically selling them, renting them. But let's actually look into this with a little bit of detail. State Duma deputies have passed a bill in the second, third readings that prohibits foreign agents from managing income from copyright, from the sale and lease of cars and real estate, as well as from dividends and deposits. Introducing the bill before the vote, United Russia member Vasily Piskarov explained that the deputies are fighting the internal enemy. So people like myself are considered internal enemies of Russia. And I will quote Piskarov. This is what he said. The front today, as we have seen, is not only along the line of combat contact. Therefore, we must continue to strengthen the security of our motherland, provide all the possible support to our armed forces, security agencies not only in the fight against the external, but also against the internal enemy. Yes, guys, people like me are considered eternal enemies. The bill was adopted anonymously by the deputies before the first reading. So obviously they already knew that they're going to accept it. So that the document assumed that foreign agents would lose the ability to manage income from intellectual property only. However, by the second reading, amendments were made that significantly expanded this list. Income for the sale and lease of real estate and transport, as well as interest on deposits and dividends, were added to it. And guess what? These incomes will be transferred to a special account, the owners of which will be able to manage the funds only after being excluded from the register of the foreign agents. Does this sound like going back into the communist time? Because if it doesn't sound like this to you guys, it definitely sounds like this to me. You know, all those people looking to go to Russia, look at the news. Look at this stuff that's happening. This is the stuff you don't get on the Western news. This is the information coming straight from the sources, straight from inside of Russia. And that's not only the thing. That is not only the problem as well. The State Duma also has proposed to direct money confiscated from foreign agents to the needs of the army. The amendments are already being developed by the Communist Party of the Russian Federation. Oh, big surprise! The flipping communists are back at it again. Oh my god, you know what? Like, the Communist Party is literally turning... I mean, look, I don't even know. the president is turning the country into communism. The Communist Party is turning communism in Russia. They want to redirect the funds that people who are against what's going on in Russia and against the regime, or they've reposted something on their Telegram channel or their social networks saying that they're against something, and if they earn money, to redirect that money for the needs of the Russian army. That's a really bad thing to do because the government is literally stealing money from its own citizens now at this point and redirecting it for what the citizens are against for. But just a little bit of a context about this and about how the Russian government are lying pieces of crap. And I'm just getting mad at this. I'm very sorry, but just 3 years ago, Vladimir Putin said that the law on foreign agents does not prohibit their work, but merely requires that organizations that engage in domestic political activity in Russia clearly and distinctively declare their sources of funding. The wording of internal enemy recalls the Soviet repressive practice of searching for the enemies of the people. Like I said, guys, Russia is turning back. Soviet Union is back in Russia. Like I said in my previous videos, we got food stamps, we got repressions against people who do not agree with the government, and you call that freedom and democracy. If you are one of those people that says that there's freedom and democracy in Russia right now, you can literally go ahead and hit yourself with a brick. I'm sorry this sounds rough, but I cannot handle it when I literally see a bunch of YouTubers or a bunch of commenters saying that I'm moving to Russia because there's freedom and democracy there and traditional family values. Oh, unbelievable. Anyways, guys, let's get to the next topic real quick here. In Russia, every single year, Vladimir Putin does a direct line. It's basically where the citizens of Russia type their questions onto a website or something like that. And after the questions are sent out, they do a vote on the most interesting questions, and they see how many people are asking a similar question, and they should be choosing that because that is what the population actually wants to hear. And I got an image right here, which is really interesting. It actually comes from the Levada Center poll. Let's read it. Putin is preparing to answer questions that are really important to Russians. And we could see what questions would Russians like to ask Putin. So the first one, which is the most popular, is obviously, when will the war end? 22%. The second one is, when are the standards of living going to increase? Pensions and salaries and benefits will be increased. That's also a big question because people are living under bad conditions. They do not have enough money to live. The number 3 question is rising prices. The prices are rising so quickly that people are not able to handle it. You know, you got I call them the Western propagandists, sugarcoating Russian economy and stuff like this, but this is literally what the Russians are trying to ask the president. The fourth one is housing and communal service problems with medicine and education. When will he bring order to the country? Retirement age, fight against corruption, the future of Russia. When will Putin leave the office, which is number 10. 11 is migrants, and number 12 is problems with the road. But what did Putin select out of the most asked questions of the Russian citizens? Obviously, he chose quality and availability of housing, transport, infrastructure, medicine, and government structures and organizations, and also benefits. And we could see at December 11th, Putin said it is clear what questions need to be prepared for, which are the majority. Obviously, he's lying right here because that is not the majority of the questions. People are interested at when the war will end, when he will leave the office, and all those questions. But obviously, he's not going to be replying about them. No way, because it is actually going to make a lot of Russian citizens actually ask themselves questions. What is actually happening inside of our country? What is going on? What is the point of all of this? Why did you start the war? When is it going to end? He doesn't know the answer because he can't even tell us what is the actual point of this. Because every single time something changes in the way he phrases the idea of why he actually started this pointless and meaningless war. Talking about the housing and a lot of people that were looking into moving to Russia for some unknown reason under the government right now. Anyways, apartment rentals in Russia may increase by 50% in 2025, and this is what the experts say. The main reason is the unavailability of mortgages due to the high, insane interest rates, which is why many buyers remain in rented housing. The greatest demand next year will be for one-room apartments and studios. At the same time, the number of available options on the rental market may decrease, and they will obviously decrease because less people are going to be buying it. There is a lot of construction companies that used to create huge apartment complexes going bankrupt because they just cannot make money from selling the housing, and everything is becoming more expensive. Construction materials are expensive. All of the stuff that is done with the machinery is obviously from the West, so you need parts for that machinery. It just becomes so expensive that with the interest rates that are going on in Russia right now, you need to be Bill Gates to buy yourself like a 30 square meter apartment in Moscow. Very, very expensive. As you guys know, New Year is around the corner. And, you know, if you don't know what to gift when you're going to a house party or something like that to celebrate New Year or Christmas, you could bring a bottle of wine or a bottle of whiskey, vodka, whatever the heck you want to bring. Russians, although, because Russia is turning into this huge communist regime, will be banned from giving alcohol as a gift. Yes, guys, I'm not kidding. This is a true story. A bill on fines from $50 to $1,000 for gifting alcoholic beverages is to be introduced to the State Duma today. According to the Deputy Svintsov, The initiative is aimed at reducing alcohol consumption among citizens and supporting a healthy lifestyle. So how will this law be enforced? Are people going to be snitching on each other? For example, I got a friend, Jim. He comes over to my house and gifts me a bottle of wine. I'm going to call the cops and be like, guess what, guys? We got a criminal right here, and he gifted me a bottle of wine. I think you should, guys, fine him $1,000 because, although he wanted to do something nice and bring a bottle of wine, this is definitely against the law, and we should definitely give him $1,000 fine. And you know what? Don't mind the fact that he only earns $250 a month. Nobody cares about that. Just fine him huge amounts of money. Yes, guys, this is the reality. Just like the Gazprom, the biggest company in Russia that gets the gas out of Russia, pumps it out, owned by the oligarchs and Putin's friends, shares fell to below $1, and this is the historical minimum. Yes, guys, one share of Gazprom is $1 right now, and the fall is happening against the backdrop of the news that the EU is not interested in further transit of Russian gas through Ukraine. So guess what's going to happen? That company is going to be suffering, which will create the prices of oil and gas in Russia is going to rise even more. People are going to get more angry with this because they're not going to be able to refuel their Ladas and UAZs and Nivas. You're just not going to be able to travel around. And not only that, if you think about it, guess how people get their food? Guess how people build their houses, build the condominiums, apartments, and so on, so on. It's used to be brought in trucks, and trucks need diesel. And if the prices go up, then everything else goes even higher. The economy is screwed already. You could see it by all of this information right here. And before we end this video, there's something really interesting. If you guys remember a guy called Alexei Navalny, he actually died in a Russian prison. He got poisoned in Russia and he didn't get access to medicine and all that stuff. He had lawyers that worked for him, and lawyers in any Western and democratic country cannot be put in prison or sued for working with any sort of a criminal, if you think about it, right? Because that's a lawyer's job to defend anybody. You're not guilty until you're proven guilty, right? Something like that. But listen to this. The prosecutor's office has requested more than 5 years in prison for Navalny's lawyers in the case of participation in an extremist community. The prosecution has requested 5 years and 11 months in prison for one lawyer, 5 years to another lawyer, and 5.5 years for another lawyer. According to the investigation, the lawyers provided communication between Navalny, who was in prison, and his team, thereby helping the politician carry out the functions of the leader and director of an extremist community. And how can you what? So, in Russia right now, if you're a lawyer, for example, and you want to defend somebody, you really got to think twice because you could be put in the same group. So, for example, right, using the logic of the Russian government, of the Russian police, of the Russian judicial system, if you defend a bank robber, right, that means you're a bank robber. If you defend a killer, that means you're also a killer. And imagine if you defend a bank robber and he tells you, oh, can you please tell my mother, my father that I'm all right? And the lawyer goes and tells that. That means that he's also the bad guy now. Oh, wow. And imagine some people are actually willing and wanting to go to Russia right now and live there under the current regime and under this judicial system, which is literally turning into a communist, repressive state, which is not a nice place to live at the moment. That's what happens. Unbelievable. I would love to hear your opinion on this. in the comment section below. I would also really appreciate if you found this video informative, if you could hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you want to see some automotive content from me, I got a second channel in the description called Sanctioned Drive. And if you would like to support my work, you could also do it through my Patreon page or my Ko-fi page in the links in the description. Thank you very much, and I will see you guys next time.